So you believe heavily in Ryan Cohen. Well, what do you make of the Bed Bath and Beyond play? What was going on there?
Sure. So that's one that I studied. I studied very hard and long. I'm the first one to come out and tell everyone it was going to go bankrupt and when it was going to happen, and I literally got it right by like 5 days. So what happened was Ryan went into a company, and he didn't know. He's so young, might even be naive, where he goes into a company where he thinks he's going to make a change. And he tells him, here's what we can do. Here's some value. We can extract it. And once you learn about private equity and you understand like how they manipulate and manage, he went into a company that was infiltrated with private equity. Sue Gove getting named the CEO wasn't by accident. It was on purpose. It's because Ancura investments are there. So Ancura, Legion Partners, and Macellum are all there. Those same three companies bankrupt Big Lots. They're bankrupting Kohl's right now. They bankrupt Best Buy or Bed Bath and Beyond. I apologize, and it's going to keep happening. And the reason why these companies are involved, Ancura and Macellum, because they go over and they do hostile takeovers. They write the letters and they demand that you put their people on the board of directors. And Ryan was like, okay. So Ryan buys out. He buys in at 9.8% of shares. Okay, and when you do that, there's a certain filing you have to do, and there's some disclosure there. But when you go over 10%, that's when it really gets live for you. And Ryan was at below 10% on purpose. When he went into those discussions, nobody talked to him. He wrote letters, he did emails, and he tweeted about it. He says, hey, I wrote a letter, I wrote an email, nothing has been received, and they haven't gotten back to me. What's going on, Bed Bath& Beyond? And you know what happened? They bought back shares with they had no cash, and they earmarked money for buying back shares, and that put them into default. They were violating their covenants. They couldn't make their bond payments, and they did it to themselves. It was self-induced, and they did it, and that changed Ryan Cohen's ownership amount from 9.8 to 10.4, 10.2. So he ended up owning more shares, and he was like, "Why in the world are they giving me more of this company?" And that's his whole deal. So he went in there, probably saw what was really happening, kicking the tires between Holly Etlin when you go in there on the board of directors. And there's a whole connection that I've done. It's called Connect the Dots. It's my series on YouTube, 86 parts. But there was this thing about the Solo building. And people don't know this part in New York. There's a Solo building. And on the first 24 floors of the Solo building, and back in 2018, 2019, in this time frame, was uh, Avon.
Hmm.
So you have to go through Avon Company just to get up to your levels. And in your floors, there's Silver Lake, there's Apollo, there's all of them. All the private equity firms are all on about 5 different floors, separated by nothing. And it just so happens that all these board of directors on Bed Bath and Beyond worked for Avon. And that's the part where I was like, what in the world? They were all in the same building. They just went into the elevator room. They went to the lobby, and they, you know what? You want to come work for this company that we're gonna go ahead and gut. I mean, if that's the way they do it. But I could give you that story of my whole life as far as Mike Milken, the Milken Institute, Drexel Burnham Lambert, how they created the idea of manipulating outcomes. It's one thing to guess on a game, one thing to guess that a company's going to fail. I can accelerate that. Let me put my people on the board of directors and make the worst decisions possible, and we can accelerate it. And then they carve out the assets and they walk away. They were doing this, and they were doing it by giving you junk bonds. And Mike Milken in the Milk in Drexel Burnham Lambert, they got arrested for this. They went to prison for this, and they shut down their institution in 1988, 1989. But those characters that were there at Drexel Burnham, they literally invented new companies, and they went and invented Apollo Global Management. So when you see Apollo doing it and they're gutting companies like Zelles, they went to Zelles in 1990, their first investment, Apollo's first investment. You know who's at Zelles? Sue Gove. Sue Gove was there for 25 years. And all of a sudden she wants to retire, and then she gets planted onto the board of directors of 6 other companies that Apollo owns. So yeah, I have a problem with private equity, and I do have a problem with the way they manipulate these outcomes. But they've done it for 40 years. It's not like something brand new. People know what this is. There's a book out there called The Caesar's Palace Coup. You can read it. You can also watch the movie called Guardians or Barbarians at the Gate. And this explains to you how private equity does it and how they leverage. And once they're in, they're in. So private equity was at GameStop. That was Bill Simon from KKR. And when you looked at him, he was on the board of directors. and they all got kicked out. The minute Ryan walks in, he goes, "Oh, you guys get out of here." So you'll see a lot of those people that used to be at GameStop are now at other companies, and you wonder, you go, "Oh no, wait a minute." That's how we know who's going bankrupt next, because there's the private equity folks there just sitting there. They're consultants, Boston Consulting Group. GameStop kicked them out.
That was
Right?
that.
So
They were good. That was going to be my next question. BCG.
you kick them all out of your company, but just because you kick them out doesn't mean you won. There's other factors. Remember, they run the real estate, they run the benefits, they have the whole game rig, they run logistics. So you have to fight off everything. Ryan's been fighting off everybody secretly, and he's doing it the right way. So to partner up with Nat Turner and PSA, awesome. It's kind of like it's a catch-22, because that company's actually owned by Steve Cohen and the Mets and, Point 72, Collectors Universe. But it's okay, because Nat Turner's in charge. Nat Turner has been an angel investor in over 200 companies, and he's on the board of directors with GameStop, and he didn't charge a single dollar out of this partnership. GameStop just said, let us get some people to you, and we'll make it work. So that's the private equity angle for me. I avoid it like the plague, but I think Ryan went into Bed Bath & Beyond, saw it for what it was. He saw that he wasn't going to make a change. Gustavo Arnell jumped off, allegedly jumped off his balcony and killed himself, right? I don't know. I wasn't there, but suicide. You know what's the craziest thing about Gustavo Arnell?
No.
He used to work for Avon. If you think I'm crazy, I'll be crazy, but I'll tell you, go watch Connect the Dots Part 17. Go watch Connect the Dots Part 14, Part 7, Part 6. Doesn't matter which one you watch. You'll see exactly what we've been talking about for all these years. But I've been doing those episodes for like 2 to 3 years now. But yeah, it'll blow your mind. And then once you really wrap your head around it, you go, okay, I get it. I really get it. And I get the same thing about Vivek Ramaswamy. I get the same thing about Bill Pulte. These guys, the guys from the Bed Bath & Beyond crowd. Bed Bath & Beyond, we know it's gone. We know it went bankrupt. Guess what? They had a whole following. Said, go buy it now that it's filed for bankruptcy. And I was like, don't ever touch it. And those videos don't exist because they erased them. But you go out there on this internet and you find people that are doing interviews, and you look at somebody like Bill Pulte, who's been appointed to the cabinet by Trump. Bill Pulte started out in his grandfather's company called Pulte Home Group, and he was assigned to the board of directors when 2 other Elliott management individuals got assigned to the board of directors. Elliott went in and did this takeover of Pulte Home Group, and they gave him a spot, and so he got the spot, and he's in there, and he's just collecting his fees. He sold his grandfather's shares. He sold the shares given to him and left his grandfather's company, and to become a Twitter philanthropist in 2019, 2020. Twitter philanthropist, to go ahead and generate some interaction on Twitter, right? Who owns Twitter? Elliott Global Management. That's who sold it to Elon Musk. So if he went from one Elliott company to the next, and now, private equity is everywhere you want it to be. So I'll stay out of all of it. I'll just put it that way. There's one company that's not in the S&P 500. There's one company that makes a profit. There's one company that their executives don't get paid the way the other ones do. There's one company that has 0 private equity. There's one company that is GameStop. And there's only one. You won't get this chance again. So
do you think private equity is that pervasive within the S&P 500? Like, are they literally
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you study it, right? You study it, you can study it with me. Go watch Connect the Dots and thank me later.
Going to.
There's a whole.
I know what my evening's going to consist with now.
Yeah, well, the thing was, it all started from a guy named Laser Haas. Laser Haas is a guy who tracked me down on the internet, and they were calling. They were like, "Hey, Laser wants to do an interview," and I was like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "Well, he's the CEO of eToys." I was like, "I never heard of eToys." eToys is a company, an internet.com company that wanted to sell toys online, and they went to Toys R Us with the idea, and Toys R Us said no. And that's when he figured it out. He said, "What the hell? What do you mean? I got this idea to save this company, and we're going to make a profit." And they said no. So Mitt Romney and the boys from Bain Capital went ahead and bankrupt Toys R Us, and they started paying. Well, I don't want to say they. Allegedly, people were offered bribes to not do the deal, and Laser Haas did not take the deal. He actually turned into an informant for the SEC, 2 whistleblower cases, and you can look it up. It was on a Rolling Stone magazine in 2015. And he turned in everybody. And it was on deaf ears because the lawyers, the judges, everybody is in on this thing. And that's when I started studying at that point. Once I talked to him and I want to see if it was real, I went and checked it all out, and he's 100% correct. So I started looking at things, and once I found it, it's because there's winners and losers, Josh, okay? The winners, you might see them, you might notice them. They're in the top 20 companies in the world. And there's losers. They're called category killers. So for every Party City, Pier 1 Imports, Circuit City, Linens and Things, the list can keep going. Radio Shacks, Sears, Kmart, those are all losers, right? They lost because private equity's in them. Who's the winning companies? Those are the ones that are taking the whole sum. There's only about 3 retail companies that exist in America that make a profit, really, when you like big mega profit. Everyone else is just trying to stay open, mom and pop style. So that's where you're at right now in America. And it's unfortunate, but private equity is embedded. And that's the most I can speak on it here. Yes.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.